Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here, and this is going to be kind of like a little bit of a blast into the past of some of the work that me, my father, my brother, we've all done on vehicles, helping my father out with restorations, customizations, and motorcycles and shit like that. So, first thing I want to start off with, this is not in any particular order as far as these photos go because they were never put in a particular order. So, first off, we have the Plymouth magazine. Now, I did a video of basically a restoration video of this truck here, kind of just taking all the photos that I took of taking it apart, doing a little bit here and there on there, and then putting it back together to paint, interior, everything. This is that truck, the 1938 Plymouth pickup truck, was put in a magazine. The owner of the truck gave my father a copy of the magazine, and it's got a 2-page article in it right here. So it's just a little information about the Plymouth and the owner and my father doing the work on there and some of the shit that we did. Now, as you can see here, the headlight's got a little bit of a gold tint to it. That's got a little bit of obviously a silver tint to it. It's because the inside of this light assembly is brand new. That one's original. The owner wanted to keep this truck as original as possible as far as the parts go. And when I ended up ordering the lens assembly for this one, I can only get one. Parts for a 1938 Plymouth pickup truck were a pain in the ass to get. It's not like a Ford or a Chevy or a Chrysler. For Plymouth, they weren't very popular trucks, and I guess nobody really thought that they were going to end up doing resto jobs on them. So they didn't save any parts, and there's really no reman parts for this vehicle. So yeah, we had to make good with what we had. So that's that. Then back in the day, I can't remember what year this was, but me and my father ended up doing a ground up restoration on this puppy. And this fucker was fast. This thing was really fast. This is one of my father's friend's project cars. And he wanted basically everything painted, powder coated. Well, wait a minute. No, not powder coated. I take that back because it wasn't powder coating back then. Painted. So we ended up, doing a ground up restoration job on this thing and putting it together in our garage over here. And then we had it brought over to where the guy works at. And that's his Corvette in the background. So I can't remember what year that was, but probably judging by the Corvette, we'll probably figure that one out. Let's see. That's our family room, front room during Christmas time, or 1 year during Christmas time. Kitchen area, vacation stuff. My father's motorcycle. I ended up doing I used to play around with Photoshop a lot, and I photoshopped my father's bike in front of the Mirage in Las Vegas. Here's the engine of that car. Yeah, like I said, the fucking thing was fast. And there's the back end of that Corvette. So from the back end of this Corvette, you could probably judge what the year was when this thing was completed. And then you guys remember this. This is the 1928 Ford Model A pickup that me and my father did a ground up restoration job. It took 4 years. I believe it was 4 years to finish that car. I know I ended up moving out, and this car is still in pieces in the garage. When I moved back home, my father asked me to come back here to help him because he wasn't getting this thing done, and because my motorcycle is right there. So I ended up coming back, and me and him finished this thing. And I've been here ever since. And this is kind of what the fenders look like on this thing when we tried to fix the problem areas that were in the sheet metal. And like I said before, you could buy any part that you wanted for a Ford and Chevy and Chrysler, but you couldn't get anything for the Plymouth. So we ended up ordering new fenders for this thing for the back because these were shot. And here's the frame and engine. Here's another photo of the fender. Another photo of the fender. Now this one here was one of my father's friends. It ended up in MotorCity.com. We ended up painting the fenders on this and then painting the rims. You could tell this is a little bit different than the 1928 Ford Model A that we restored, because this has the windows on the side of the, has the windshields on the side of the windshield. This one was a little bit different. Now, this is the fender from the Ford Model A that we did a ground-up restoration. This gold shit here is brazing. This is all lead. So when we stripped it down, we saw how bad these fenders were. We ended up just ordering new ones anyway. And then this is, obviously you've seen this picture before because it was in my video of the 1928 Ford Model A pickup. This is the original version of that truck. So, and this is when I was doing some welding, practicing some welding. Let's see here. Now this here is a photo from back in 2000 that I used to play around with Photoshop, and which is my father's old bike. This 6-pack of Harley Davidson beer is actually sitting right there. That was our old dog, Bo, and I put a cigarette in his mouth and a little hat on his head and photoshopped it. This picture ended up in a Harley Davidson magazine years ago, like I said, back in somewhere in 2000. My father's friend sent it to Harley Davidson, and they ended up posting it in the Clad Up magazine. Now, this was something that my father wanted to do, which is that clock right there. He wanted to build, buy these little Harley Davidson motorcycles and make a clock, glue it to the clock, and give them away as like Christmas presents and shit. It was kind of like a cheap thing. Now, here's an old Harley that me and my father ended up doing a restoration job on a long time ago. And this is basically all the photos that we have of this bike. Now, the engine and stuff, we didn't do anything with the engine, but the frame got painted, tanks got painted. Oh, here's something. This was my little job that I had to do. This is supposed to be a music note, and there's supposed to be some fuzzy dice hanging off of it. This I did, I was probably 19 years old when I did this, somewhere around then. The guy, it's for his wife. It was his wife's bike, and I think it was either a Yamaha or a Honda or something like that. You know, the old fat tanks, and then they had the side covers over the electronics of the bike. One screw held them in place. They weren't clip-ons, and this is when fenders were still metal, not fucking plastic. But she just told me what she wanted, how she wanted. I kind of did the pinstriping myself, and I airbrushed the fuzzy dice and stuff on there. My father helped me with doing the paint because I can't paint worth shit. And this is how it turned out. She loved it. And this is a 1958, I believe, Schwinn Black Phantom bicycle that me and my father restored. This is before I ended up finishing the basement. This is where the stairs are, where all my guitars are now. And you can tell by the basement floor. Here's the basement floor. Here's the basement floor. Here's a better picture of the fuzzy dice. Well, maybe a little bit better. Now, my father did this. There is a horizon, a dot in the horizon, which kind of looks like, the camera didn't give it justice, but it looks like a road, and there's a sunset in the background. But because of the camera, the paint, and whatever, you can't see it. Didn't work out very well. Kind of see it a little bit better here, not very well. But yeah, that's the fuzzy dice, and did a lot of I don't know what you would call it, fogging in around it and everything else. If you weren't on top of it, it was very hard to see. This was my Uncle Chevelle that my father and my brother ended up doing a paint job on. Yeah, there was a dent in the fender right there. My uncle ended up, after he fucking got the thing painted, he ended up bumping into something. He doesn't have the wheel wells inside, so that made the fenders a little bit weak. Bumping into something and ended up fucking crinkling it. And here's the car right here. And my Uncle Jeff. This was a paint job that my father did a long time ago. Harley Tank. some of the bikes that we've owned. This was a custom paint job that my father did on one of his friend's bikes. And this was like all stenciled in, sides and top. He was a Harley fender and chain guard and front fender and back fender. The back fender of these old bikes, the old Harleys, they flipped over, and you can get to the back tire. Either this was a Harley or an Indian, I'm not too sure. And there's a custom paint job that my father did on a old Harley tank. I don't know, wait, that wasn't a Harley tank, that was something else. And here's some more pictures. Here's a custom Triumph that my father ended up doing. Here's another picture of that fender that I ended up doing. This was like a weekend at my house all the time. You know, you see guys hanging out in the fucking garage, motorcycles fucking everywhere. Now, this was a weekend at my house. You had, well, there's only one bike in the street, so it's still kind of early, but you had bikes in the fucking driveway, bikes all over the fucking driveway. Then when the rest of the bikes showed up, there was more bikes in the fucking street. And then we were kind of like, there's a couple of friends back in the day. We were in charge of watching the bikes. Now, this tank here is his wife's. This guy, what was his name? Joe. My father put his name down. He's passed away now. And said painted by EJC or JC and EC. That's me and my father. I did the airbrushing on this. Hopefully it focuses and stays focused pretty good. That eyeball was done by hand, not with the airbrush. That son of a bitch would follow you when you were standing around the bike. This was a Honda Rebel gas tank, and his wife wanted a unicorn head on top of the tank, so I airbrushed one under for him. My father in his old Triumph, which is right there. When he used to put it into bike shows, he would always bring that tank with him. There's an old VW bus that my father ended up restoring. There's my father and one of his friends that he was working with at the time doing cars. Another custom paint job. No, actually this is the same tank as what I saw earlier. These are the fenders for that one tank that had the music note on it. This son of a bitch. Old 442 Oldsmobile. I ended up, I was probably 12 years old at the time or something like that, 13. Just started working with my father in the garage. My brother usually was the one that helped my father at the time, but my father wanted to teach me how to do shit. And this is a big car. You could see that that's the back bumper is basically all the way up against the fucking garage door, and then the front bumper with the wall was like right there. You could barely walk past here. Now, we popped off all of the chrome trimming. Bumpers came off. All the trimming around the window, what do you call that? It's like a gutter that went around the windows back in the day on the old cars. We pop off the trim off of that. All the trimming, the only thing that stayed on the car were the windows, the windshield, the back window. Everything else came off when we did a paint job. And we would cover everything with regular newspaper, windshield, glass, whatever. And it worked pretty good, but sometimes overspray still got a little bit on the windshield. So I was in charge of removing the overspray off of the windshield. So I end up use a razor blade, or you can use lacquer thinner. So I poured lacquer thinner in a little Dixie cup, and I set it on the fucking hood. It melted through the cup and melted into the paint on the hood. So my father had to respray the hood. He was pissed. I didn't know any better. So here's that Oldsmobile again. The bike my father worked on. This is my Uncle Lenny's bike. This guy here, man, he was built like a brick shit house. A little Dago, short little Italian guy. But man, he was built like a brick shit man. Now, this was a typical weekend at my house. All the biker guys would come over, and we would have bikes going up and down the fucking street, all over the driveway, and that was basically our weekends. Here's the Italian side, the Dago side of the family. my grandfather and my grandmother. I don't know who these kids are, but yeah. Yeah, my grandmother was a good-looking woman back in the day. So that's that book here. Let's see what we got over here. Yeah, another picture of my father's bike. Oh, yeah. My father and my mother met, I can't remember what the fuck his name is, but the guy from The Sopranos. And my father became kind of like almost buddy-buddy with him a little bit, which was kind of, I don't know, maybe weird or so, but this is a garage that me and my father built for one of our friends. This garage was in a warehouse, and he would store his old cars inside here. When me and my father were restoring a bathroom, a machine that my father built, another machine that my father built, testing a camera to see how well the quality was on old screws, some friends, and this is probably nothing here. Oh yeah, this is, I can't remember what year it is, but it is a Cushman scooter. And my father had the what they call a Screaming Eagle Cushman, that's what we have in the garage right now that we're still trying to finish up restoring. This one here is, I can't remember what the hell the name of this one was. This was my uncle's. And when we first moved into this house here, this was in the basement. My father ended up was supposed to do a restoration job on this thing, and it basically sat in the basement ever since we were kids. Then it moved into the shed in the backyard when we put up a shed. And my father, like, I was probably 21, 22 years old. My father says that he wants to start doing a restoration job on this. So I was like, okay, fine. So we ended up doing we ended up restoring it. And that's what this picture is right there. And then there's this book here, which is basically, here's another picture of that Ford. I don't think there's very many pictures. I don't know what happened to all the fucking pictures that we've had. And these look like, okay, I can't believe my father kept these. This is a GTO Judge. Behind it is my Chevy Beretta GT Custom that I had. And this is a model. I used to fuck around with Photoshop, and this was a model car that I built, and I kind of like scaled it to fit in my driveway. This one here is a 57 Chevy model that I built, and you can tell it's too short. It's not long enough. It's, it looks like a mini fucking 57 Chevy. Back in the day when I used to build models, I used to have this like silver tape. And what that silver tape was for was doing all the chrome trimming on like plastic models and shit. So the doors didn't open on this car, but the hood and the trunk did. And what I ended up doing was taking that tape, that silver tape, and going over all of the areas that were chromed. This was a decal where the stripes were, and the rest of it was that tape. And I had to cut the tape where the seam is between the body and the trim. And I also did the same thing around the windshield and the side, everything that was supposed to be chrome, got that tape on there that was trimming. But yeah, I can't believe my father kept those. I used to do a lot of this shit years ago. Here's a car that my father, I didn't have nothing to do with this, but this was a car my father did just a paint job on, nothing fancy. Didn't need any body work, just needed a repaint job, and my father did that himself. I don't think I was here at the time when he did this one. And this is just a trip that he went on. I think that's it as far as that goes. Yeah, here's another picture of my father's bike. Yeah, that's it. Diet Pepsi. Now, I know there's more pictures someplace else. I don't know where the hell they're at as far as what he did. Oh, here's some vacations trips my father went on. Different places. So unless I find more photos, I think this is the end of this video. So that's just a little bit of the shit that my father, my father, my brother, all of us has helped my father with, and doing stuff, and if I can get this back inside the cabinet. I know there's more photos someplace. I don't know where the hell they're at. And a lot of them are in no particular order as far as being organized goes. But so that's it, folks. Just a little bit of a blast in the past.